I heard it said that if you're lucky enough, you just may live a ripe old age. Now, of course, that's if you're lucky enough. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, good evening. 4 years ago, the year 2018, I took a trip out to Arizona. Now, I have three brothers and their families that live out there. And at the same time, my daughter and her entire family had moved out. I believe it has something to do with the weather. Now, I was going out there to spend time with them, but the primary reason for my visit is to go see my mother. My younger brother had recently told me that our mother had been relocated from one assisted living facility to another. And she was in bad health. I got my airline ticket and I flew out there, got my rental car, drove over to my brother's house. Just prior to going, he had mentioned the new resort that she had been at, where she was at. So I went online and I looked at the website, and it was state of the art. The place was probably less than 10 years old. When I got to my brother's house in Arizona, he handed me the brochure of the resort. And I'm looking at it, and it wasn't really just a brochure, it was like a pamphlet. And it was glossy. And I'm thinking, this was not inexpensive. And I looked it over, and it was exactly the way the website had depicted. State of the art, they spared no expense. This place had all the bells and whistles. So my brother and I, we went out, we got in this car, we drove over to the resort, parked this car, and I'm sitting there, and I'm looking over the ground. It's the first time I'm looking at the building, and it was just a beautiful structure. What really caught my eye was the landscape. And I saw some Mexican workers, gardeners, taking care. And I thought, man, this is awful green. 90, 100-degree weather. It's almost like it out in the Midwest. They really took care of it. There were a couple of benches, and there was a fountain. So my brother and I, we get out of the car, we walk up the sidewalk to the front entrance. We get to the front entrance, and there's two huge oak doors. I grabbed the handle, the door was heavy. Pull it open. My brother and I, we step in. And there was a little counter, there was a little foyer, maybe 10 by 12. Little counter, and there was a woman behind it. She recognized my brother immediately. Obviously, he's a regular. And he introduced me, said hello. He signed in, and she says, well, Ed, you know the drill. But the thing that really caught my attention wasn't so much what I saw initially, it's what I smelled. There was a very faint smell of like a perfume and like a disinfectant. And it wasn't exactly pleasant. So we went to the next door, opened that door, and then we stepped in. And right in front of us were the caretakers. There was a large table, there was some attendants in the background. They had a huge dry erase board, some notations about different residents of the resort. So my brother says, well, Mama's room is down this way. So we started walking down toward the room. That's when I noticed that particular smell that I noticed in that foyer was overpowering. Disinfectant, like a perfume. And I'm thinking, I don't know if they're spraying it or if it's coming out of the duct. So we get over to my mother's room and we go in, and she wasn't there. So it's a very small bedroom, very small. And I'm looking around. I see some pictures on the wall, some artwork that she had done years ago. There were a few little paintings also, and there was an overstuffed chair. I look over there at the little bed, just a small little, what do you call it, one-size bed. Very small, just a tiny bed. I look over the bathroom, and I can see that there was a handicap bars to utilize the bath. There was a little hoist. So I looked at it, some bags, but it was kind of depressing compared to the home that she used to have back here. And I'm thinking, you work your entire life, you go through your whole life, and now you're reduced to this little cube. So I look around, and my brother says, well, maybe she's down the hall. So we start walking down the hall. The hallway is probably about 10 foot wide. You can get 2, 3 wheelchairs going down the hall, side by side. It's just wide. And every room, rooms on both sides of the hall, there were little glass case. And inside this glass case were some pictures of the resident in the room, maybe a little short Bible. So we go over to the TV room, and there was my mother, sitting in a wheelchair. So my brother and I, we go give her a hug. And, she recognized me right away. But then she started thinking, your wife's name? Oh, what's her name? She couldn't remember. Like, a little bit of dementia and Alzheimer's came in. And there was like 4 or 5 other residents, and they were just sitting there. No one was saying anything. No one was talking. There was a small TV that they were all watching. The one individual, the one guy, was just sitting there, kind of drooling. Drool coming down. I'm thinking, that's pretty sad. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what are you guys watching? She said, oh, it's a little Western. Well, you know the name of it? No, just a Western. Back from the 40s. Okay. And I'm looking at some of the other residents, and this one lady is just sitting there, probably 85, maybe 90, just staring at me. I say, hello, how are you? No expression, just staring. Another guy is just sitting there, just kicking his arm. And I thought, well, my brother says, well, let's take her, we'll go back to the room. So we walked her wheelchair down the hall, all the way around the corridor. Now, in the middle of this entire complex, it was like an atrium in the center. All greens, garden like out in front, waterfall. There were benches everywhere. And I looked, I thought maybe I'll come back later and maybe come up and take a look. Wheel my mother back to her room. Get her in the room, mother and I hoist her out, set her in her stuffed chair. She's sitting in the stuffed chair, we're making small talk, and I go over and I sit on the floor, and I take out some of the photo albums. And all these photo albums were from my 5 siblings, and it was all of us when we were younger, and the grandkids. Memories from my mom. And then there was like an unpleasant odor in it. And it occurred to me what happened. Our mother had soiled us. So my brother, he beat for one of the attendants. One of the attendants came in, and I told my brother, I said, well, I'm going to take a walk down the hall. So I walked down the hall, and I started to stop at different rooms, and I look in at the person that was in the room, and I read the bio. This one guy was a former police chief in a small town in Colorado. He showed a vibrant man in his uniform, and I read the entire bio, and it was very impressive. Some of the accommodations and citations he had earned over the years, over a 25, 30-year career. And I look in the room, and he's just a shell of his former self. And I go down, I go to the next room, and I see another bio. This person at one time was an airline pilot, was a woman, works for Delta. Beautiful young lady, long blonde hair, just gorgeous. She had 4 kids. They all lived out in the Midwest. I just look in, and she was sitting in a chair. Not doing anything, nothing in her hand. And I just thought to myself, this is sad. And I started to walk, and I noticed somebody behind me following me. And I said, can I help you? And they said, no, I'm going where you're going. Okay. So we started to walk. And I walked from room to room reading these bios. Some of these people were extremely accomplished. And I thought, well, let me go take a look at the atrium. So I go over, and I tried to pull open the door, and I realized it was locked. locked from the inside. It finally occurred to me, why? They didn't want any of the residents to go out there without an attendant. I go all the way back around. I go back to my mom's room. And it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, dinner time. So we wheel her out to the cafeteria, dining hall. There's actually two of them. We wheel her over to a table, nothing specific. And there's a few other women there. And what I noticed was the tables were all plastic. They were nice. The floor was linoleum. And when they started bringing the meals, they brought them to each individual person. They set the meal in front of them. There was no silverware. The silverware that they actually had, it wasn't actually silverware. It was like plastic, like a spork. And then the cups all had straws, like a sippy cup. And then and I looked at the food and I'm thinking, this is all very soft. It was like mashed potatoes, really soft. And peas, green peas, that were overcooked, so they're real mushy. Got to remember, the majority of these residents were dentures. They didn't have any teeth. And there was some applesauce and some kind of a meatloaf, very soft. And I'm watching the residents and missing their mouths trying to eat, food spilling. I look at some of the other tables, food on the floor, spilling the drinks. And it was sad. It was depressing. Then I look over at the other dining hall. And there was about, maybe 30 feet of tables, all butted up together. And I saw the attendants wheeling them in, one by one, in wheelchairs. They set them on the one side of the table, all over. And then I saw the attendant go, leave, come back with a plate of food. And the attendant would sit here, person in the wheelchair there. And it occurred to me, these people, they can't feed themselves. So the attendant, spoon feeding. And I just, this is sad. This is truly sad. Then as they're leaving the dining hall, there was an attendant standing there with a tray with all these little cups, their names on it, medication. And each and every resident, when they went through with the walkers or the wheelchair, they had to stop with their medication. And the medications were probably in excess of 8 to 15, 20 pills. Then my mind started churning. And I'm thinking, man, this is depression. Then that word came back to me. There's no doubt about it. These people have reached old age. But lucky? This is not my definition of lucky. This ain't living. Finally, when my brother and I, we wheeled my mom back to her room, and when we walked out, I just remember when we walked out, I was exuberant and had energy when I came in. When I walked out, my head was down. We got in the car and we started talking. And I got a little misty-eyed. I told my brother, that ain't no life. That's not living. That's a place to die. I said, the only lucky ones are the people that run these facilities and the big drug companies that keep them alive long past the day that they were going to die. 2 years later, my mother died. The expense that she was paying to live in this facility, $95,000 a year. And a lot of them pay a lot more. Truly sad. I'd like to switch gears for a moment. Go back in time a little bit when I was a kid. Now, y'all probably remember when you were younger, going to a sled hill. I was probably about 10 years old, and my pops used to take us to, there were three main places we'd go sledding. We'd go to Rouge Park, we'd go to Kensington Metro Park, and Stony Creek Metro Park. I remember my dad getting the toboggan, wooden toboggan, throwing it on top of the van, throw a couple sleds in the back and a couple of discs. So, all right, kids, load up the van. We go to one of these parks. We get to the one park, I remember, I went to Kensington. It's Kensington Park. I'll never forget it. And I look down the hill, and I see a guy down there He ain't sledding, he ain't surviving. He's got a set of skis on his shoulder. He's walking back up the hill. That puts off on me. He comes all the way up, he puts them on, straps them in, and he takes off down there. I said, damn, I want to do that. I told my pops, I said, that looks exciting. He said, well, he said, okay, Bill, he says, give me a chance, I'll look around. Ride shell, flea market, show him something. A couple weeks later, he had me a set of skis. Bare boots, they were about my size. They were a little bit big, but it's okay. We went back to the sled. I put them on. I felt like king of the hill. Went down, I was excited like you couldn't believe. From that initial start, 10 years old, my dad finally realized how much I enjoyed it. And at the time, he was also doing some work over at Ford Rouge out in Dearborn. In Dearborn, they also had, there was a ski shop in town called Schneider Ski Shop, sports club. And they had a ski club. I said, what are you going to do? I'll sign you up if you want to join it. He signed me up with Schneider Ski Club. The thing is, he dropped me off on Saturday. We hit all the resorts down here in Southeast Michigan. Alpine Valley, Mount Brighton, Pine Knob, Mount Holly. Then, part of the ski club, the ski team, we'd race other clubs. And I just got it. It was just beautiful. I took some lessons, I got better and better, started racing. When I finally left there, in fact, even when I was in high school, I skied all the time. When I was stationed in Germany, and I had a little R&R, I go up to the Bavarian Alps, up in Garmisch in Germany. I ski up there. I took an R&R trip, and I went over to Austria, skied in the Austrian Alps. When I finally got out, I skied all over. I've taken half a dozen trips out to Colorado. I skied extensively in Canada. I've gone up north of Montreal, skied at Mount Tremblant. When my kids were growing up, for 6, 7 years in a row, we go up to northern Ontario, Blue Mountain, every year. And then, finally, when all the kids left, just the wife and I, thought, well, I don't like skiing these little hills down there. They get too crowded. So typically, the last 5 years, we've been going up to Harbor Springs and Taos. 3 main resorts up there. Boyne Mountain, Boyne Highlands, and Nubbs Knob. And my favorite is Nubbs Knob. Now, the reason I like it is I like downhill skiing. I just love aggressive, hard black diamonds, steepest runs. So we go there this past winter, back in February. And I remember I'm sitting in the lodge, getting ready. I look around and we only ski during the week, Monday through Friday. And I look around and I see only senior citizens. There's no kids. The kids are in school. So we make some for little kids. I'm looking and most of them, they're like 40, 50 seniors. I know they're older than I am. And they're all doing the same thing, getting their gear on. So finally, I go up to the lift and I get on the high-speed lift. I go all the way up to the top of the hill. And typically what I do, when I get to a resort, is I hit the intermediate run, just get the confidence up. Get the rust off. Then when I go up the second time, I start hitting all the black diamond runs, all the aggressive runs. My legs are fresh, I'm good to go. Third run, I'm on a chairlift with this older guy. I didn't know he was older at the time. We're going up the chairlift. He says, he says, by the way, where are you from? I said, I'm from down the state. Sterling Heights. How about you? I said, I'm right over here in Harbor Springs. I'm living there about 15 years. He said, really? Did you come here often? I said, yeah, every winter we come up here. We ski Nubbs Knob and Boyne Highlands. He says, you know something, I'm going to tell you something. He says, if you're 70 years old, you get to ski free here. This is a private resort. He says, me and all my pals, we come here. I said, really? You get all the way to the top of the hill, you get off the lift, he goes off to the right, I'm going to the right. We're heading toward the steepest, fastest, hardest hill there is. He told me he was 83 years old. We were on the chair. I'm watching him, he's about 30 feet in front of me. All of a sudden, He pops in. I can't see his helmet. I drop down in onto the hill. I look in front of me. I was impressed. This guy was skiing down that hill like Jean-Claude Killy, like he was in the Olympics. I followed him all the way down. I'm a pretty decent skier. I get down, I get back on the chairlift with him. I said, man, that was pretty impressive. Yeah, you're pretty good skier. He said, hell, we got a guy in our club, he's 90 years old. He said, he used to be a member of the skiing squad. He's still skiing, maybe 2 days a week. He'll come out for a few hours a day. He said, you gotta watch him ski. Wait till they put the slalom gates. We think he was in his teens. A little while later, the wife and I, we go back in the lodge. And I see all these guys getting undressed. And I look at them. And they're all 80s and 90s, 70s. We go back out. I go back on the lift. I happen to get up on the lift. He says, you know, I saw you in the lodge. You're a young fellow. He says, you know the secret to life? I didn't know there was a secret. He's all that. He says, you know what the secret is? You get old when you stop playing. He says, remember when you were a kid? You were on that sled hill? He says, think back then. Everything you did when you were a kid was fun. It was all about having fun. You get old because you stop playing. He says, this is living. He says, all of us here, all of me and my retirees, we ain't going to no home. He says, hell, if I'm going down 50 miles an hour and I crash into a tree, that's the end of it. He says, this is living. He said, when those homes, that's just a place to die. He says, that's not us. He basically told me, he says, young fella, as you go through life, remember one thing. You stay young and you keep playing. As long as you're having fun and you play, you won't be old.
Thank you very much, Bill. And with that, I'll turn the program over to our